I never thought the day would come when I drive down the same dirt road my grandfather built with his own 2 hands and find it guarded like a war zone. The gate was locked tight. A bright red sign screamed "Keep out." And before I could even take a step forward, HOA cars swarmed in from both sides, lights flashing, engines roaring. And the woman in charge, pointing straight at me, shouting words I'll never forget. But just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the police stepped forward. And what they told me next changed everything, forever. Welcome back, my friends, to HOA Karma Stories, where real drama meets the strange power of homeowner associations. My name is James Carter. I grew up right here in a small Texas town, and I'm just a man trying to hold on to the last piece of my family's history, our ranch. If you're new here, take a moment to join our little community. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, not just like the young folks do, quick and fast. But do it the way we used to write letters back in the day, with care, with meaning. Because your support keeps these stories alive. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? I'd love to know if you're sitting in a warm kitchen in Ohio, or maybe out on a porch in Arizona. Because every place has its own HOA story, and today, this one is mine. When the police officer stepped forward, my heart sank. The flashing red and blue lights bounced off the old brick pillars of the gate, and for a moment, I felt like a criminal on my own land. The woman in the pink jacket, the one shouting at me just seconds ago, crossed her arms and smirked like she had already won. The officers didn't say a word at first. They just stared at me, like I was some kind of intruder. But deep inside, I knew the truth. This was my land. My family's ranch. The last piece of my grandfather's blood, sweat, and tears. And yet, standing there with the suitcase at my feet, locked out by a heavy padlock, with police cars blocking both sides of the road, it didn't feel like mine anymore. I looked straight at the officer. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his hand rested carefully on his belt, not threatening, but firm. Behind him, the engines of the HOA cars roared, their headlights aimed at me like spotlights on a stage. And in that moment, I realized something. They weren't here to welcome me back. They were here to drive me away. The officer finally spoke. "Sir, we need to talk." His voice was steady, almost calm, but it carried a weight that pressed down on my chest. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry. Talk? About what? I hadn't even set one foot on the ranch, and already I was surrounded. I took a deep breath and answered quietly. "This is my land, my family's land. Why are you blocking me from coming home?" The woman in the pink jacket snapped before the officer could respond. "Don't you dare call it your land. We've kept this place in order while you disappeared. You don't get to show up after all these years and act like you belong here." Her words cut deep. I wanted to shout back, to remind her that my grandfather built this ranch long before the HOA even existed. But my voice caught in my chest. Instead, I bent down, touched the old dirt with my hand, and whispered to myself, "Grandpa, I'm home." The officer shifted his weight, glanced at the woman, then back at me. "Sir, things have changed since you've been gone. There are rules now, rules we have to enforce. You can't just walk in." Rules? On my grandfather's land? It felt like someone had just slapped me across the face. I stood up straighter, anger rising inside me. My grandfather never signed this land away. My father didn't either. This ranch is mine, by blood. Who gave you the right to tell me I can't walk on it? The woman laughed bitterly. "Oh please, don't make this harder than it already is." The community voted. The HOA is in control now. You left, we stayed. End of story. Her words echoed in my ears. The HOA is in control now. I clenched my fists, but the officer raised a hand, almost as if to calm me down. "Sir, let's keep this peaceful. No one wants trouble here." But that was the thing. There was already trouble. And it had started the moment I turned onto that dirt road. I looked around me. The air smelled like dust and gasoline from the idling SUVs. The porch of the old farmhouse was visible in the distance, just like I remembered it, the rocking chairs, the wooden beams, the flowers my grandmother once planted. I could almost see her sitting there, smiling at me. But the smile faded quickly in my mind, replaced by the reality of HOA patrol cars blocking the driveway, and strangers telling me I didn't belong. I took another deep breath. The truth was, I had been gone a long time. Too long. Life pulled me away, far from the ranch, far from the land I was supposed to protect. But now, standing here at the locked gate, I knew I had made a mistake leaving for so long. And the HOA knew it too. They had been waiting for this moment. The woman stepped closer, her finger pointing right in my face. "You need to leave, before this gets ugly." I didn't move. My feet were planted in the same dirt my grandfather once walked on every morning. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't leaving. Not without answers. Not without fighting for what was mine. The officer sighed, looked at his partner, then leaned in just slightly. "Sir, if you stay here, things are going to get very difficult for you. The HOA, they don't lose. And if they've called us out here, that means they're serious." Serious? Blocking a man from his own family ranch? Locking a gate and calling the police on me? Yes, they were serious. But so was I. I turned slowly, letting my eyes move from the woman, to the officers, to the bright headlights of the HOA cars. Then, finally, back to the locked gate. I could almost hear my grandfather's voice in my head, telling me not to back down. Telling me to stand firm. Telling me to fight for what was right. So I did. I looked straight at the woman and said, "I'm not leaving." The silence that followed was heavy. The officers exchanged quick glances. The engines of the SUVs rumbled louder, like thunder rolling through the valley. And for a split second, even the woman's confident smirk faded. But then, she laughed. A cold, sharp laugh that sent chills down my spine. "You'll regret this," she whispered. And in that moment, I wondered, what exactly was she planning? What was coming next? Because something told me, this fight was only beginning. If you were standing in my shoes that night, locked out of your own family's land, police cars surrounding you, HOA screaming at you to leave, what would you have done? Would you walk away, or stand your ground? Tell me in the comments, because I want to hear your story. The woman's cold laugh still echoed in my ears. And even though the officer stood between us, I could feel the weight of her words pressing down on me. "You'll regret this." Those 3 words kept running through my head like a storm. I had no idea what she meant. But the look in her eyes told me she wasn't bluffing. The air was thick with tension. The headlights from the HOA SUVs blinded me, the engines humming like an army ready to move. The gate, locked with its heavy padlock, stood tall between me and the only home I had ever truly known. And I stood alone. I gripped the handle of my old blue suitcase. It felt heavier than ever. Not because of what was inside, but because of the memories it carried. Every step I took back to this land was for my grandfather, and now, it seemed, I was about to fight for him all over again. The officer closest to me cleared his throat. "Sir, listen. I don't want this to get out of hand. Maybe it's best if you just leave for tonight, come back when things are calmer." Leave? As if the land I was born to inherit was just some hotel I could check in and out of. I shook my head slowly. "No. I'm not leaving. Not tonight, not ever." The woman's smirk widened, like she had been waiting for me to say those exact words. She stepped closer, tapping the lock on the gate with her finger. "You see this? This lock doesn't open for you anymore. This isn't your ranch, this is ours." Her voice dripped with venom. And for the first time, I noticed movement behind her. A man in a dark uniform was walking down the porch of the farmhouse, slowly making his way toward us. His face was shadowed, but his stride was strong, confident, almost threatening. I pointed at him. "Who's that? Who's on my family porch?" The woman turned her head briefly, then back to me. That's our enforcer. The one who makes sure rules are followed. You'll be meeting him soon enough. Enforcer. The word itself felt like a knife twisting in my gut. They weren't just trying to block me, they were sending a message. A message that the HOA wasn't some friendly neighborhood group. No, this was power. Raw power. The man in the dark uniform stopped at the edge of the driveway. He folded his arms, watching us silently. Not a word, not a blink. Just watching. The officer shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am," he said quietly to the woman, "let's not make this worse." She ignored him. Instead, she leaned closer to the gate, her finger pointing right at me again. "You don't belong here. You ran away, and now you come crawling back. You think this ranch is yours because your grandfather once lived here? Times have changed. We have rules now. And rule number 1, you're not welcome." I felt my blood boil. I pressed my hands against the cold metal bars of the gate and shouted back. "This land is in my blood. My name is still on the deed. You can put locks on the gate, you can bring cars from both sides, you can even call the police, but you'll never erase what my family built here." For a moment, silence. Even the officers hesitated, caught between her fury and my determination. But then, I heard a sound that made my heart pound faster. The click of a radio. One of the HOA men inside the SUV spoke into it, eyes locked on me. "Target is refusing to leave. Do we proceed?" Proceed? What did that mean? The woman's eyes lit up. She nodded at him and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "Yes. Proceed." Suddenly, the SUVs revved their engines louder. The officers turned, confused, as the HOA cars inched forward, their headlights glaring hotter, their grills shining like teeth. It felt like they were ready to push me right off the road. I took a step back, clutching the suitcase tighter. My heart raced. For a split second, I thought they really were going to run me off. The officer barked out, "That's enough. Back the vehicles up." But his voice didn't carry the same authority it should have. The HOA wasn't listening to him. They were listening to her. The woman laughed again, a laugh colder than before. "You see? Even the police can't protect you here. This isn't your land anymore. It belongs to us. The HOA owns this ranch now." Her words twisted inside me. Owned? How could they own what my grandfather spent his life building? How could they claim something that was never theirs? I stepped forward again, hands gripping the bars of the gate so hard my knuckles turned white. "You can lock me out. You can surround me. But you can't erase me. I will never give this land up, do you hear me? Never." The man in the dark uniform finally spoke. His voice was deep, steady, and it sent chills down my spine. "You talk big for someone standing outside a locked gate." His words hit me like a punch. Because he was right. I was outside. And they were inside. For a moment, my knees felt weak. But then I remembered why I was here. I remembered my grandfather's hands, rough with calluses, building that porch board by board. I remembered my grandmother planting flowers by the fence. I remembered running through the fields as a child, barefoot, free. And I knew no lock, no gate, no HOA would ever take that away from me. I stared the enforcer down, refusing to look away. "This may be your gate today, but it will be mine again tomorrow. You can bet on that." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. The officers, the woman, the SUVs, even the man in uniform, all of them stared at me like they weren't expecting me to fight back. Like they thought I'd fold. But I didn't. The woman finally broke the silence. "Fine," she hissed. "If you won't leave, we'll make sure you're thrown out for good." My stomach twisted. Thrown out? How? What were they planning next? I didn't know it then, but the fight had only just begun. If the HOA rolled up with police cars and locked you out of your own family ranch, would you fight like I did, or would you give up the land? Be honest, what would you do? The sound of her words will make sure you're thrown out for good, cut through the night like a blade. I stood frozen, staring at her across the locked gate, as the HOA SUVs growled like predators waiting to strike. For a moment, all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. But then, something inside me shifted. Fear turned into fire. I wasn't about to let strangers rewrite my family's history. I stepped closer to the gate, close enough to smell the iron of the metal and see the reflection of the flashing lights in her eyes. You think you can scare me off with threats? I said slowly, my voice low but firm. You don't know me. You don't know what this land means to me. If you think I'll walk away that easy, you're dead wrong. The enforcer, the man in the dark uniform, smirked for the first time. Careful, he muttered. Talking like that will only make it worse. Worse? What could be worse than being locked out of my own ranch, surrounded by HOA vehicles, police officers watching silently, and neighbors treating me like a criminal? The woman in the pink jacket leaned forward, gripping the bars of the gate with both hands. You've been gone too long, she hissed. This place doesn't even remember you anymore. The land has a new master now. And you? You're just a ghost trying to come back to life. Her words burned like acid in my chest. A ghost? No. I was flesh and blood, standing right here, ready to fight. The officer closest to me cleared his throat again, almost pleading this time. Ma'am, sir, let's all calm down. This isn't the way. But nobody listened. The HOA wasn't here to calm down. And I wasn't here to give up. I turned my eyes toward the farmhouse in the distance. Even in the glow of the SUV lights, I could see the porch, the same porch where my grandfather once sat every evening, rocking gently as the sun set over the fields. I could almost hear the creak of his chair, the smell of his pipe tobacco, the way he'd wave at me as I came running up from the barn. And now, that same porch was guarded by strangers. By an HOA enforcer. By people who wanted to erase my family's legacy. My jaw tightened. I'm not leaving this spot, I said firmly. Not until that gate opens. Not until I stand on that porch again. You can call every car in the county if you want. You can bring the whole HOA army. I'm not moving. The woman's smile faded. Her eyes narrowed, sharp and cold. Then you leave us no choice. She raised her hand, waving at the SUVs. Engines roared louder, lights flashed brighter, and one of the cars inched closer, its grille pressing against the dirt road just feet from me. The rumble shook my chest. I stood my ground. I didn't flinch. Not even when the car crept forward another few inches. The officer barked again, louder this time. Stop the vehicle. That's enough. For a second, I thought the driver wouldn't listen. But finally, the SUV froze, its engine snarling like a caged animal. The officer turned to the woman, anger flashing in his eyes. You can't do this. He has a right to be here. A right. That word made my chest swell. Finally, someone said it. Finally, someone remembered that this ranch wasn't just dirt and wood, it was my heritage. But the woman snapped back instantly. No. He lost that right the moment he abandoned this place. The moment he left it in our hands. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. Abandoned? No. Life had pulled me away, yes, but never once had I stopped thinking about this land. Never once had I stopped feeling its pull in my heart. I shouted back at her, my voice echoing through the night. I didn't abandon anything. This land is in my blood. My name is still on that deed. And you can lock every gate in this county, but you can't lock me out forever. The enforcer finally stepped forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. He stopped just behind the gate, only a few feet away from me. His eyes locked on mine, cold and unblinking. You talk tough, he said. But tough words don't open gates. Power does. And right now, we have the power. He leaned closer, his voice dropping lower, almost like a whisper meant only for me. Do yourself a favor. Walk away. Before we show you just how far that power goes. His words sent a shiver down my spine. But I didn't step back. I didn't blink. I looked him dead in the eyes and whispered back. Do your worst. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of engines and the faint creak of the gate in the night air. Then, I saw movement from the farmhouse porch. Another figure emerged, someone older, slower, carrying a lantern that swung gently in the dark. The light revealed his face, wrinkled, weathered, but strong. He looked at me from across the yard, and my heart nearly stopped. Because I knew him. Or at least, I thought I did. The woman turned, startled, her confidence cracking for the first time. What are you doing here? She shouted at the old man. But he didn't answer her. His eyes stayed locked on me. And in that moment, I felt something shift in the air. Like a secret had just walked out of the shadows. What do you think? Who was that old man with the lantern, and why did the HOA woman look so shocked to see him? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I want to hear your theories. The glow of the lantern cut through the dark night like a knife, and for a moment, the noise of engines and shouting voices seemed to fade away. All eyes turned to the old man on the porch. His steps were slow, heavy, but filled with purpose, like every footfall carried the weight of something bigger than all of us. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that face. I had seen it in old photographs, faded and yellowed with age. Could it really be? The woman in the pink jacket spun around, her voice cracking for the first time since I had arrived. You shouldn't be here, she snapped. This isn't your fight anymore. But the old man ignored her. He lifted the lantern higher, its warm glow spilling over the yard, over the gate, over me. His eyes met mine, sharp and clear despite the wrinkles and years carved into his face. You came back, he said softly. It wasn't loud, but the way he spoke made the air tremble. I pressed forward, clutching the cold bars of the gate. Who are you? I whispered. But deep down, I already knew. The woman stomped her foot, her composure slipping into anger. Don't listen to him. He has no say here. The HOA rules stand. This land isn't his anymore, it belongs to us. The old man turned slowly, fixing her with a stare so strong it silenced even her sharp tongue. Rules, he muttered. That's all you people ever talk about. Rules, fines, control. But this ranch, this land, was never built on rules. It was built on blood. On family. My heart thudded in my chest. I swallowed hard, the words tumbling out of my mouth before I could stop them. Grandpa, is it really you? Gasps rippled through the officers and even some of the HOA men inside the SUVs. The woman's face went pale, her lips tightening into a thin line. Don't play games, she barked. He's not your grandfather anymore. He signed it all away years ago. He gave this land to us. I shook my head, refusing to believe her. The old man, my grandfather, stepped down from the porch, the lantern swinging in his hand. His boots crunched on the gravel, steady and sure. He stopped at the edge of the driveway, just behind the enforcer, his eyes never leaving mine. I never gave them anything, he said firmly. They took it. Piece by piece. They tricked me with papers, rules, lies. And when I was too old to fight, they locked me out of my own home. The weight of his words slammed into me. So it was true. The HOA hadn't just shown up after I left. They had stolen this place from him, from us, long before. The enforcer shifted uneasily, glancing back at the old man. Enough, he growled. You're confusing things. You don't belong in this conversation. But my grandfather didn't flinch. He raised the lantern higher, the light glowing brighter against the night sky. Don't tell me where I belong, he snapped. This is my bloodline. And that man right there, he pointed straight at me, is my grandson. And if you think you're going to erase him like you erased me, you've made your biggest mistake yet. The officers glanced at each other, whispers moving quietly among them. For the first time, doubt flickered in their eyes. Maybe they were realizing this wasn't as simple as a trespassing call. The woman's face twisted with rage. "You old fool! You signed the papers. You let us in. Don't act like a victim now." But my grandfather raised his free hand, steady and firm. "I signed nothing that gave you my soul. You may have stolen ink on paper, but you will never steal the spirit of this land." His words hit me like a bolt of lightning. The spirit of the land. That was what this was really about. Not just a ranch, not just a piece of property, but the legacy, the blood, the story of our family that could never be measured in rules or HOA meetings. I shouted through the gate, my voice stronger now, fueled by his courage. "You hear that? You can't take what was never yours. Not from him. Not from me. Not ever." The SUVs growled louder, almost as if responding to the tension, but this time, the officers stepped forward. "Enough," one of them barked. "This isn't right. You can't intimidate a man out of his own family home with vehicles and threats. This is beyond HOA business." The woman spun on them, fury in her eyes. "You stay out of this. The HOA rules are the law here." But one officer shook his head. "No. The law is the law. And you don't get to rewrite it just because you put up a locked gate." For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. My grandfather stepped closer, placing his hand on the gate. The lantern's glow lit up his face, every wrinkle, every scar, every year of struggle carved into him. He looked at me with pride, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "You came back at the right time, boy. The question is, are you ready to finish what I couldn't?" My chest tightened. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him I'd fight until my last breath. But the truth was, I had no idea what I was stepping into. The HOA had power, cars, money, officers at their call. All I had was him. And the fire in my heart. I met his eyes, gripping the gate tighter. "Yes, Grandpa," I said, my voice trembling but sure. "I'm ready." The woman slammed her hand against the metal bars, her face twisted with rage. "Then you've just signed your own fate. Both of you." Her voice echoed through the night like a curse. And deep down, I knew she meant it. If you were standing there and your grandfather suddenly appeared, telling you to fight for the family land, would you have the courage to say yes? Or would the HOA's power scare you away? Tell me in the comments, I really want to know what you'd do. The words still hung heavy in the night air. "Then you've just signed your own fate. Both of you." Her voice cracked like a whip, but my grandfather didn't even flinch. He stood tall, lantern glowing in his hand, eyes steady on me as if daring me to lose my resolve. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't standing alone. The enforcer shifted his stance, stepping closer to the gate. His broad shoulders blocked part of the light, casting a shadow across my face. "You want to fight us? Fine," he said. "But understand this, the HOA never loses." I held his stare. "Maybe that's because you've never had someone fight for something real. For blood. For family. For history." The woman slammed her hand against the gate again. "History doesn't matter anymore. Rules do. And our rules say you don't belong." Her voice was sharp, bitter, almost desperate now. But behind her anger, I saw something else, fear. Why was she so afraid of us being here? Why was she desperate to keep us out? My grandfather stepped closer, the lantern light flickering across his weathered face. "Tell me the truth," he said calmly. "What are you so scared of us finding on this land?" Her eyes widened. She didn't expect that question. She stammered for a second before forcing a smile. "Scared? Of you? Don't flatter yourself. The only thing I fear is chaos. And you too, you bring nothing but chaos." But her voice shook on the last word. I caught it. My grandfather caught it. And the officers standing nearby caught it too. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. I could hear the faint hum of the insects in the fields, the low growl of the SUVs still idling, the crackle of the police radios. And underneath it all, the rapid beat of my own heart. Finally, I spoke. If you're not hiding anything, open the gate. Let me in. Let me walk onto my own land. The woman froze, her lips pressed tight. The enforcer turned to her, waiting for her answer. But she said nothing. Not a word. The officers exchanged glances again. One of them leaned closer to his partner and whispered, "She doesn't want him inside." Why? What's back there? That question lingered in the air like smoke. Even the HOA men in the SUVs shifted uncomfortably. My grandfather's hand gripped the top of the gate, his knuckles white. "They know something," he muttered under his breath. "They're not just keeping us out. They're keeping something hidden." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Hidden. What could they possibly be hiding on this ranch? I clenched my suitcase tighter and stepped forward again. "You've been barking orders all night, telling me I don't belong. But you never once told me why. If this land really belongs to you, then prove it. Show me the deed. Show me the papers. Show me anything that says you own what my grandfather built with his hands." Her face twisted with rage. "You don't demand proof from us. We demand obedience from you." The officers shook their heads. One of them finally spoke louder, his voice carrying authority. "No. That's not how it works. If this land is truly HOA controlled, there must be documents. Legal filings. You can't just lock people out because you say so." The woman turned, snapping at him. "Stay out of this. You're here to enforce order, not question it." But the officer crossed his arms firmly. "Order doesn't mean blind power. We're not your private army." That statement made her flinch. The enforcer stepped forward, fists tightening, but my grandfather raised his lantern higher, his voice booming with a strength I hadn't heard in years. "You see? Even they don't believe you. Your lies are cracking, and soon this whole facade will fall apart." The crowd grew restless. Engines revved, boots shifted on gravel, whispers spread through the officers. For the first time, the balance of power was tipping. The woman turned back to me, her face pale now, sweat shining on her forehead. "You don't understand what you're walking into," she said softly, almost like a warning. "You think this is about family land, about rules, about a gate. But it's bigger than that. Much bigger." Her voice shook on the last words. And for the first time that night, I believed her. I leaned closer, my hands gripping the gate tighter. "Then tell me. What is it you're hiding? What's so big you'd rather surround me with cars and cops than let me step foot on my own land?" She didn't answer. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. My grandfather looked at me, his eyes filled with both sorrow and fire. "They've turned this place into something it was never meant to be. And the truth is buried right here." Buried. The word rang in my head. Buried. I thought of the locked barns, the sealed sheds, the hidden corners of the ranch I hadn't walked in years. What could possibly be buried here that made them so desperate to keep us out? The enforcer's voice broke the silence. "This ends tonight. One way or another." He raised his hand, signaling the SUVs. Their engines roared louder, headlights blinding me again. For a split second, I thought they were going to ram the gate, crush me under their tires, end this once and for all. But then, my grandfather stepped in front of me. He held the lantern high, his shadow stretching long across the dirt road. "If you want to bury us too, you'll have to try harder than this," he growled. The woman's face twisted into something almost unrecognizable, a mixture of fury, fear, and desperation. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "You don't know what's coming." And deep down, I knew she was right. Something was coming. Something far bigger than I had imagined. What do you think they're hiding on this ranch? Why is the HOA so desperate to keep us out? Drop your guesses in the comments, I'll be reading every one. The engines of the HOA SUVs roared so loud it felt like the ground beneath my feet was shaking. Headlights blasted into my eyes, the locked gate between us rattling as if it too could feel the pressure of the moment. But all I could hear were her words echoing in my head. You don't know what's coming. I clenched the bars of the gate so tight my fingers ached. What's coming? I shouted back. What are you hiding on this land? The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't answer. But her silence was louder than any scream. The enforcer's boots crunched against the gravel as he stepped closer, his shadow stretching long under the flashing lights. You ask too many questions, he said coldly. Questions have consequences. I didn't look away. Then maybe it's time for answers. Behind him, I saw my grandfather's face glowing in the lantern light. His jaw was set, his eyes fierce, like a man who had been waiting years for this moment. They won't answer, he muttered. They're too afraid of the truth. The officers standing nearby shifted uncomfortably. One of them whispered to the other, "This doesn't feel right, this isn't just an HOA dispute." No, it wasn't. It was something deeper. Something hidden. And every second of their silence proved it. I slammed my hand against the gate, the metal vibrating under my palm. You can't keep this secret forever. This land belongs to my family. If there's something buried here, I'll find it. If there's something hidden, I'll uncover it. You can lock every gate and post every guard, but you'll never stop the truth from coming out. For the first time all night, the woman's confident mask cracked. Her voice trembled as she shouted back, "You think you know what you're asking for? You think you can handle the truth? If you open this land, it'll destroy you." The words sent a chill down my spine. Destroy me? What could possibly be here that would destroy me? My grandfather stepped forward, his lantern casting shadows across the ground. Tell him, he said, his voice sharp and commanding. Tell him what you people did here. Tell him why you built your rules around this ranch. Tell him why you keep outsiders away. But she didn't. Instead, her eyes darted nervously to the enforcer. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't the one in charge. He was. The enforcer's eyes locked on me, cold and unblinking. This isn't about you. This isn't even about your grandfather. This is about control. And if you stay here, you'll lose everything you've ever known. I stepped forward, pressing my face closer to the bars of the gate. You've already taken everything from me. What else is there to lose? His jaw tightened. Your life. The words hung heavy, cutting the air like glass. The officers froze, their hands twitching toward their radios. Even the SUV engines seemed to quiet for a split second. My grandfather raised his lantern higher, his voice booming across the night. You threaten my grandson again, and you'll regret the day you ever set foot on this land. The enforcer's lips curled into a cruel smile. You're already standing on borrowed time, old man. But then, something happened. A sound. A faint, hollow sound. It came from the ground beneath the enforcer's boots. A dull, echoing thud as he shifted his weight. Almost like something hollow lay beneath the dirt. I froze. My grandfather's eyes flickered. He heard it too. Slowly, he turned his head toward me. Do you hear that? He whispered. The enforcer shifted again. Another thud. Another hollow echo. The woman stiffened, her face turning pale. Don't, she hissed at him. Not here. Not now. My heart pounded. What's under there? I shouted. What are you standing on? No answer. The enforcer's face stayed blank, his body rigid. But the woman's panic betrayed everything. She shook her head violently, her voice shrill. Stop talking. Stop asking. You don't want to know. But I did. I wanted to know more than anything. Because suddenly, I realized this wasn't just about land, or rules, or property lines. It was about whatever secret lay buried beneath our feet. The officers finally stepped closer, suspicion clear in their eyes. "What's under there?" one of them demanded. "You called us out here to keep him off his own land. What are you hiding from him?" The enforcer didn't move. Didn't blink. But the woman snapped, "Nothing. Nothing at all. He doesn't belong here, that's all that matters." But her voice cracked. And in that crack, the truth slipped out. My grandfather slammed his hand against the gate. "You buried something here, didn't you? Something you don't want us to find. That's why you locked me out. That's why you tried to erase him. You're not protecting this land, you're protecting your secret." I felt my chest tighten, anger burning hotter with every second. "What is it?" I demanded. "What's buried here?" The woman turned on me, her face twisted with fury and fear all at once. "You'll regret digging, boy. Some truths should stay buried forever." Her words sent chills crawling up my spine. But at the same time, my resolve hardened. Because now I knew. Whatever the HOA was hiding on this ranch, it was the reason they fought so hard to keep me out. And nothing, no locked gate, no threats, no SUVs, no enforcer, would stop me from uncovering it. What do you think the HOA buried on this land? Is it money? Secrets? Something darker? I want to hear your theories, drop them in the comments below. The sound beneath the enforcer's boots echoed again, that same hollow thud that didn't belong on solid ground. The silence that followed was heavier than the night itself. Every eye of the officers, the HOA members, my grandfather, even mine, locked on that patch of dirt. My heart raced. Something was under there. Something they didn't want us to find. I stepped closer to the gate, my voice sharp, filled with fire. "You can't hide it anymore. Whatever's buried under this land, it ends tonight." The woman's face twisted, her lips trembling. "No," she shouted. "You don't understand what you're asking for. If you dig this up, if you uncover it, you'll destroy everything." The enforcer didn't speak. He just stood there, frozen, like a man who knew his secret was no longer safe. The officers finally moved forward, suspicion burning in their eyes. One of them barked, "Step aside. We're going to see what's under there." The woman spun on them, panic flashing across her face. "You can't. This isn't your business." But the officer shot back firmly, "When the law is being broken, it becomes our business." My grandfather's grip on the lantern tightened. His eyes glowed with something fierce, something proud. "They're afraid," he muttered to me. "They know the truth will set this land free." The enforcer finally spoke, his voice deep, his words deliberate. "You dig there, and you'll regret it." I clenched the bars of the gate, my blood boiling. "Then I'll regret it. But I'd rather regret knowing the truth than live the rest of my life in the dark." The officers exchanged glances, then one of them pulled a flashlight from his belt and directed its beam toward the hollow patch of dirt. The light revealed disturbed soil, uneven, freshly turned. Not the untouched earth of a field, but the ground of something hidden. The woman's voice cracked as she screamed, "Stop! Don't look there! Don't you dare!" But the officers ignored her. One of them stepped closer, kicking lightly at the dirt. The sound echoed again, hollow, unnatural. He crouched, brushing away loose soil with his hand. And then, the metallic clang. The unmistakable sound of metal buried under earth. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even I felt my knees weaken. What could it be? A box? A container? Something worse? The woman clutched the bars of the gate like she was holding onto her last breath. Her voice cracked into a scream. "Cover it back. Now!" But it was too late. The officers were already digging, pulling at the dirt with their hands, scraping the soil until a large, rusted hatch appeared beneath the ground. It was wide, solid, sealed shut with heavy locks. A hidden hatch. Right under the driveway of my family ranch. My grandfather's voice shook, not with fear, but with anger. I knew it. I knew they turned this place into something it was never meant to be. The officers stared at the hatch, disbelief etched on their faces. One of them whispered, "What the hell is this doing here?" The woman's face crumpled with rage and fear all at once. "You don't understand. This isn't for you. This isn't for anyone. Close it. Leave it buried." The enforcer finally spoke, his calm mask slipping into something darker. "You open that hatch, and you'll never look at this land the same again." I pressed my face against the gate, my voice trembling with fury. "Open it. Now." The officers hesitated, but the decision had already been made. One of them pulled a crowbar from his vehicle. He wedged it under the lock, straining, pulling with all his strength. Metal groaned, screeched, and then, with a loud snap, the first lock broke. The woman screamed, her voice raw. "Stop! You don't know what you're doing." But no one listened. One by one, the locks cracked open. The officers heaved, sweat glistening under the flashing lights. And then, with a final push, the hatch swung open. The smell hit first. A thick, heavy, metallic scent that crawled into the air. Not just dirt. Not just rust. Something darker. The officers shined their flashlights inside. And what I saw made my stomach twist. Crates. Rows of old, rusted crates stacked in the darkness below. Each one stamped with faded markings. Government markings. My grandfather's face went pale. His voice dropped to a whisper. "They used the ranch." The woman's shrill voice cut him off. "They had to. Don't you see? This was the only way. We were protecting the community." Protecting? From what? The officers climbed down, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The beams landed on one of the crates. The faded stenciling became clear. Weapons. Military-grade weapons. The HOA had turned my family ranch into a hidden armory. Gasps erupted from the officers. One of them shouted back up, "These are illegal. This is a federal crime." The enforcer's calm finally broke. He lunged toward the officers, but they drew their weapons instantly, shouting for him to stand down. The woman screamed, clutching the bars of the gate like her life depended on it. "You don't understand. If word gets out, everything we built will fall apart." But it was too late. The truth was out. My chest heaved, my mind racing. The HOA hadn't just stolen my land. They had buried a secret so dark it threatened the whole community. They had turned the place of my childhood into a fortress of lies. My grandfather's eyes welled with tears, but his voice was strong. "This land is ours again. Their lies are over." The officers ordered the SUVs to shut down, calling for backup, their radios buzzing with urgency. The enforcer stood silent, his jaw tight, his future sealed. The woman collapsed to her knees, mumbling under her breath, we were protecting. But I didn't care what excuse they gave. The truth was all I needed. The ranch was mine again. Not just by blood, but by truth. I pressed my hand against the gate, the cold iron now feeling like victory instead of defeat. I looked at my grandfather, and for the first time in years, he smiled. "You did it, boy," he said softly. "You brought the truth into the light. If you uncovered a secret like this, a hidden armory buried under your family land by an HOA, what would you do? Would you go public and risk everything, or keep it buried to stay safe? Tell me in the comments, because this is the kind of truth that can divide a community forever."